Welcome to the Go Tanium Tech Stories podcast. Uncover the stories behind the technology and revel in the challenges solved. The guests on today's show are thought leaders from both inside and outside of Tame. Leave behind the trite and the text-plaining. Find a comfortable spot, sit back, and enjoy this episode of the Go Tanium podcast. And here is our host, Doug Thompson.
On a promotional note, make sure you go check out and register for Converge 2021. That's Tanium's annual conference and gathering of thousands of global IT and security professionals for 3 days of engaging keynotes, informative breakout sessions, and technical hands-on labs. The hands-on labs place, the labs are off the hook, off the chain, off something or other. Anyway, you need to get there and get those labs and get your hands on some Tanium. The links to sign up are all in the show notes. Hey, and we'll see you there. Hey, everybody. Welcome again to the Go Tanium Tech Stories podcast. This week, I am honored to have Rory Prendergast as my guest. Rory, hi. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Doug.
Well, good. Well, a little more excitement here. This would be, you're talking to me. You're talking to the audience about Tanium. So anyway, I appreciate it. And I appreciate you coming on. So tell me a little bit about you. We were having a conversation last week, and you were like you're like a single-digit employee. You seem to have been around here longer than dirt. So me being a newbie, you always like hearing these backstories and as the company grew. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. That's true. I was one of the first people here. I think I might have been employee like number 10. And I was a real early Tanium customer. I took a demo from sort of a light introduction. I think my reseller had told me, hey, these people built BigFix, and what they're interested in is they just want your opinion. They just want to get your opinion on how this product looks. And I said, well, I know BigFix, and I'll take any demo from somebody doing anything interesting since nothing works. And I took a demo from Orion Hindawi, who's our CEO, and of course that was maybe one of the best demos I've ever seen in my life. And you can imagine that Tanium is, back then, there's not much to it. So, as a Flash-based console, there's just the questions and answers and sensors and, no product modules or anything. But what he demoed was just fabulous. So I bought that. I said, I'm not quite sure why I'm going to need this, but I know I'm going to need this sort of thing. And it wound up being an extremely useful tool. And then I wound up coming over here after I left my gig, and that was a fabulous decision.
Well, I like how you said that nothing worked. And when was that? 2012, I think I saw. Is that about when you came over?
Yeah.
And things haven't changed that much. Very little works still.
No, it's amazing. Anything works if you stop and think about it.
Yeah, and a lot of it,
amazing.
If you're around IT long enough, things stay around forever. And architecture, by necessity, in the early days, by necessity, it was very complicated. You had to have hub and spoke and all these other things simply because of the way that to get things to scale. Bring that forward now with a bunch of extra layers, and that's it's just very complicated. And that makes it easier to sort of, again, not work. And that's one of the things when I saw Tanium, I said, hey, look, this is a different way of thinking here. And I didn't get the demo by the CEO, but that's a whole other story.
That was a good one.
So what are you doing now?
I work inside this. There's a team inside Tanium called the GTO team, and we're sort of like an accelerator team. We're trying to prove ideas out. We'll try any crazy idea. Give it a once over. Does this look good? Does this look bad? It's actually quite a lot of fun.
Are you looking for a story? We all get into IT because we like things that are cool at a certain point in time, but we also find that a lot of cool things don't actually make any money, or don't, but they're cool. They suck up some electrons and electricity, and it's fun. What are you looking for when you're doing these things? Because at the other end of the day, they really have to solve something. There's got to be a story behind it.
Yeah, it's a great shame. There's ideas that are just so fabulous, but it's hard to figure out how something like that's going to actually fly. At the end of the day, we're here to enable the businesses to solve business problems. That's because we we sell software to businesses. This isn't a charity operation. Like, we need to make sure that the stuff that we do is realistic. So part of the job is, getting in front of customers and really getting their feedback. Okay, does this actually look good? Or are you just saying that? And what would you do to change it? Those are some of the most important things you can ask. I remember real early, Orion was very clear that, one of the worst things a software company can decide to do is just a bunch of ivory tower development, right? Like, it's like, this will be good for you, trust me. And if you build it, they will come. And there's some truth to that. Like, sometimes that can be very useful, but most of the time, you have to at least get some input. So it's a critical thing to get right.
Yeah, it's, I came from Microsoft, and they were very guilty of doing that back in the early Windows days, of where you'll get what we think's cool and you'll like it. That's
we're in no such position, I think.
Yeah,
we really have to be responsive to our customers who really have choice in the market. So I think it's a testament to sort of our staying power, is our ability to react and get things done that our customers need us to do on what's ultimately like a very flexible platform.
Well, and that's another thing that I really liked about when I was looking at coming to Tanium, is that in looking at all the reviews and stuff, is just simply the focus on the customer. How can we make this better? And it, having been in IT for probably longer than you were probably still in some school system when I started in IT. Common thread of that is they need problems to be solved, and sometimes though they need to be guided a little bit. So sometimes taking a flyer on something that you as a strategist or something would see based off hearing somebody else, and you're looking for those outliers, which could be sort of the leading edge of what the next big thing is. And you're looking for what problems are they having. So you're trying to stay ahead, especially like with cybersecurity. How are you going to try to stay ahead? Well, it's hard to stay ahead of them, but you want to make sure you're not too far behind the bad guys, because they always seem to be, they're not bound by making money from an attack perspective. They want to make money.
Well, it's an economics operation on their side. Like, they have to make sure they're, it does cost money to pay these people unless they're sort of state sponsored or whatever. But, it's a commercial endeavor in a lot of cases. And you're right, you can't stay ahead of them. It's a cat and mouse game. And, one of the most compelling features of the platform, I think, is just the ability to bend it this way or that. And that goes two ways. Like, one is a customer will tell us, I really wish that you people would build X, Y, or Z. And I love to hear that stuff. I really do. But on the flip side, the thing that I think is most compelling is, just personally to me, the message that, why wait for us, right? Which is kind of one of the most important undersold features of the platform, is the ability to just get your hands dirty and build it on top of the platform using what are really simple primitives in really primitive languages like Bash and Python and things like that, PowerShell. So there's a lot you can get done on top of the platform if you need to sort of, just have a vendor that'll get out of your way, and you have a really important problem to solve, get a few smart people in a room and have them bang it out.
Yeah,
I think is the most compelling thing I can say about any really ultra flexible platform.
Yeah, you were telling me a story when we were just talking earlier about how just simply the baseline of the platform, the Interact module, where you get to ask questions. I mean, that is sort of the old, if you had to equate it to anything in IT, that's the command line. That's where you can get out there and still use the keyboard, type in some really cool, and do just about everything that you can do with all the other modules that are in there. If you've got the time and tenacity and talent to go ahead and, like you said, sort of build your own thing, why wait on us? The platform's there, and we give you those capabilities. So you mentioned, they ask us, hey, could you build X, Y, or Z? What is usually your follow-up question?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I should say, let me just clarify. I'm not a business strategy person. I haven't worked corporate IT since, like you said, 2012. Living and working inside of the vendor space, it's, you're sort of speed dating all these customers, and you have a very sort of loose idea of the reality on the ground. And I think that's true. the longer you sort of stay out of the chair. So a lot of times I'll lean on other folks to ask like very important qualifying questions like, what do you see as the market potential of X, Y, or Z? Mostly I'm interested in sort of technical feasibility, and the way I think of everything is if you can keep the sort of the admin happy, right? You sort of won half the battle. And I think about problems being sort of time wasters, like how would you, like if you could wave a wand, how would you make sure you weren't interrupted on your weekends and those sorts of things? And then digging in to make sure that if it was me, operating some product or idea, like, is it actually really going to save me the time? And can I go do other things? Not if it looks like it's just going to be a mess and it's actually going to cost me time for not a lot of benefit, then, those are the kinds of the questions that I like to dig in on, I think, or at least think about myself. But yeah, generally I'd say that's the most important thing is that, if you go in on a platform like Tanium, the best thing you can get out of it, just personally, is that you don't have to walk out of a movie theater or whatever because you've set things on autopilot and your estate's in better shape than it once was, and it's not breaking all the time, and that's how I like to think of it.
That's a good question. And you said you've been out of the chair for a while, which again, anybody that's been at a vendor for a long time has been out of that chair. We get to see a lot of chairs. And we get to talk to a lot of people. Do you still get to go out and talk to a lot of people and sort of get a feel for, keep your ear to the ground and tell war stories that way?
Yeah, I think, last year, I think I interviewed like 20 customers, just trying to find customers that are sort of doing development work. So I talked to like 20 something of them for anywhere from like 45 minutes to 2 hours. If you get people talking about something they love to talk about, and I love to talk about that, those conversations are fabulous. And we got a lot of really interesting sort of loosely collated data on what customers are, why they build on top of the platform, what they wish they could get, from an engineering standpoint, like some support from, certain features in the platform and all that stuff. And that was really fun to do. It's nice to be able to reconnect and, give people ideas like, hey, did you think about doing X, Y, or Z? Or, you want to go talk to this other customer who's doing something similar. Like those are fun to do.
In the pre-sales role where I get to go talk to a lot of different customers, I used to use the analogy, I'm not the smartest person in the room. I'll usually say that up front when I'm talking to a lot of smart people, but I'm like a bee, and I spread the pollen around, so I get ideas and stuff from other people that are again relevant and that you can share and get them to thinking, because I think as you put that spark, or you plant that little seed of, they've been thinking about something, but they either get validation that they're thinking along the way, or hope, or it sparks another idea. And it's really sort of that, if you played pool and stuff and you sort of hit ball, sometimes balls just go all over the place with unintended consequences, but it can spark different thoughts in the way that you come across these things. When you were back at the customer, again, everything was breaking. What was different other than the stuff working and the CEO giving the demo? What was the difference, between what Tanium that you saw, or the story that they were able to tell, versus the others?
Oh, yeah, like versus the sort of modern day. I mean, like compared to other products that were on the market at the time, it was like, here comes people from outer space, right? Like everyone's playing baseball, and here comes these people showing up with this completely different game, and you're like, what is that? And that's sort of one aspect, which is, again, in a world where sort of everyone's, more pool analogies, but if everyone's sort of behind the eight ball to sort of not get hacked, for instance, and my job was sort of security engineering at that time, it was relatively greenfield build out. Any sort of edge that you have, you'll take it. And I think the edge in that sort of early demo was, here's this tool, here's some basic data we can pull, but watch what we can do. And it was, pull data at scale really, really quickly, and deploy files and take action at scale really, really quickly, which is that's nearly the whole of IT if you're only concerned with endpoints. Mm-hmm. You need to understand your endpoints and you be able to make changes on them. It's just, it was really very raw. Today, if you get a Tanium demo today, we still talk about that stuff. That is something that is an important feature of the platform. But of course, customers have real specific things that they need to solve. And it's not the case that a very general sort of UI is the best sort of workflow for things like patch management. So if anyone listening out there was an early Tanium customer, you might remember the early patch content that we had that was really just done in what we call Interact today. That patch content was extremely effective. Like, you could patch your estate to like 99%. I mean, it was crazy because it was just so dead simple, nothing ever broke. But going through and knowing what you had deployed and organizing things into lists, like that is something that you need to have some kind of a UX around. You can't just wing that. It's very important to be able to, at a glance, figure out what you've deployed, or maybe you didn't deploy something that you were supposed to. So there's I'm really happy with the sort of state of Tanium today, where we can sort of do those best of both worlds. One is have a real guided experience, but two, we always have that cartoon escape hatch when that's the vendor didn't think of the thing that you need to have built. Maybe it's not the vendor's role or responsibility. It could be something really custom, like deploying a very custom application in a very special way, or building tooling to support other agents that you've purchased, right? Like, that's something that people do inside Tanium that's kind of fascinating. All kinds of stuff like that we still have that available.
Yeah, and along those lines, I mean, when I used to hear the comments a lot when I was at my previous company that we had an 80% solution, and then you'd sort of rely on partners and other people to try to fill in the gaps or things. Sometimes you couldn't fill it in until the next version came out. And I think, in listening to you tell the story, that's still what sets Tanium apart, is that you have the ability to fill that 20% or maybe 19% of it yourself. And because every environment is a unicorn, you look across of it, there's still one or two things which you either inherited, or there's some requirements, or some oddball thing that comes up where you can't be a template of somebody else. And you need, but yet that 1% still keeps you up at night, because that's where your gap is. That's where your other thing is. So the ability to get in and do something custom to address, let the main product take care of the 99%, and you can then go fix the 1% that keeps you up at night, rather than solving what a lot of people will do. I see, is they solve for that 1%, and it makes the 99% just unwieldy. You can't use it because it's just way too much stuff.
Right.
And it's trying to get people, as I talk to them, to think about I'll tell a story back where I used to work, as we sold CRM stuff as well. And we were talking to a customer, and they said, well, we're just going to build that from scratch. And I'm like, by the time that you get it done, it's going to be out of scope and out of date. Why not take a base platform, spend your time customizing that to fit your, and they just couldn't understand that concept.
I mean, I think that there's a similar story in, not CRM so much, but if you go talk to sysadmins, right? Like, it's like they have their doctor bag that they take from job to job. There's the doctor bag's just full of scripts and things that they've accumulated over the years. Yeah. And one of my favorite things to say to people is, you can drop your stuff. You can drop the stuff from your doctor bag right into Tanium and execute it. And that might be enough to get you, again, there's the last 20%. Let's say 19 is, that's a lot. So we'll say like 15% or 10%. That's not nothing. And, that's you can make a lot of hay there with, again, like, it's very simple code. I promise anybody who's sort of even feeling like maybe they could put their toe in the world of scripting and automation, if you need a boost, the only boost you can ever, the best boost you can ever get is to have real world problems to solve and a reason to do it, right? So I always like to tell people that it's not enough to just read a book about, how to become a programmer, and you write like tic-tac-toe 4 times in different languages. And you're like, well,
hello world.
am I a programmer? No. Yeah. And not really. You have to have a reason to do it over and over. And for people in IT, like, this is a pretty fabulous reason to do something over and over. Just be able to pull arbitrary data off your environment and make arbitrary changes to your machines using like simple scripting languages that you're supposed to know anyway in this field. Like you should know some PowerShell. If you're a Unix person, I promise you know some Bash.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the last mile, right? Like the last mile problem is solvable by individuals who are sort of not only motivated but actually have a means to do it. And we have a pretty great way to accelerate that sort of stuff. So, there's a customer that like paid for half of their entire Tanium install, with a single sensor, right? And that sensor was checking on a piece of data, and they were able to use that data to prove that somebody that they were paying a lot of money to wasn't doing their job, and renegotiated that contract. There's small victories. They seem small, but some of them can be very huge. It's pretty amazing.
Well, and before they were just probably blaming a number of other things why that wasn't working or doing what it was doing, right? And so it's about
right. Like and that's like kind of an old use case. There's two use cases that are kind of fascinating that you can't buy a product for, right? You need a person, and one of them is sort of checking on the people that are supposed to be doing work for you, right? It's checking on your people that have come in and you're paying them money to do X, Y, or Z. Spot check those people. Spot check the health of your other agents. And then the other one is spot check if you're going to do like a merger or an acquisition, and you don't want to throw the full VPN line over. Like, throw the Tanium line over only and just start asking questions to that environment and get a sense of, okay, what's this going to be like? They're not patched. Like they haven't done any kind of vulnerability scans or anything like that. Just start pulling data on them. And that one has been very popular over the years.
Yeah, the second episode of the podcast, I interviewed Tim Morris, who came over from Wells Fargo, and he talked about the mergers and acquisition piece, and that's how he first met Tanium and Orion. And you're right. I mean, that's another thing that's unique is because of the way that it works with the agent pointing back to the platform. It doesn't matter what directory you're part of or these other things. You can dip that line over in that other pond without risk of having everybody get on your boat. Right, so it's a good way to do that.
Killing your dudes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's the last thing you do is bring an unwanted. The in-laws come with the company that you're buying, and you find out these problems later. So,
another that's similar is like checking. If you have an auditor and they're like, "Can you prove X, Y, or Z?" And I've been on the other side of those sort of audits, and sometimes it's really hard to prove that. You don't want to look like a fool. But if maybe there's a few Tanium sensors that come out of the box that you could string together in something like Interact and say, "Here, check this out." Or, if not, like again, you throw a PowerShell script in there and just get it done.
Yeah, and for the audience that may not be quite familiar with the platform, a sensor. Describe a sensor to our audience there in the baseline. If you're talking to a CFO, explain a sensor to me.
Oh, CFO? Oh,
yeah.
It's got to fit on an index card. I got to figure this out. So a sensor in a Tanium question, like get computer name and IP address from all machines. A sensor are the sort of nouns in that question. So like a computer name is a sensor and an IP address is a sensor. And we just stole that word from the English language. It doesn't mean something that you place out in the environment that's looking for something. All it is just a noun in one of those sentences. And you can ask for that. And what happens when you ask for that piece of data, like IP address, is it's going to go down to the machine, and then the machine's going to know how to produce that IP address data by executing code that you provide. So, in our sensors that we ship out of the box, they're inspectable. Like you can take a look at what they do. If you're a Tanium customer, you copy and modify those sensors all you'd like. We'd prefer if you'd file bug requests and ask us to improve them, but customers do that. They'll clone them and make them their own, and that's fine. But yeah, that's what a sensor is. Just a piece of code and a little bit of description about how to return the data. So you can sort of say, well, when this data comes back, it's going to be a version string, right? And then Tanium endpoints know how to compare version strings, or you can say this is a date timestamp or whatever. You can assign sort of light types to these pieces of output.
Cool. That's a good explanation. As a CFO, I understand that, and it's going to save me a lot of money.
I never said it'd save you money, but
Well,
it should.
You gave the example
should.
earlier that it did. It saved this company. They paid for the installation of that.
Yeah.
So
certain sensors are worth a lot more money than others. That's
so if you're looking 12 years from now, I'm going to ask you to sort of read the future, because you sort of in that group talking to our customers, and no, this is no commitment on product development or stuff. What are the problems that are like 6 months out or something out from really having a good answer to? We know they're sort of emerging. You're seeing, these little tidbits come up. I saw something the other day where there was it was on Windows. It was a Razer mouse or something like that. You plugged in, and it introduced you could hack PowerShell, get admin rights, all this stuff, which is just sort of ripe. What's sort of the next? Because we have to worry about this every day. What do you see as next?
I don't know. There's what I wish would happen, right? And then there's the reality of kind of the fact that very large enterprises, it's just difficult to make changes within them. And I don't want to sound like a defeatist, but what I wish would happen would be sort of an honest assessment about, permissions and what's necessary on Windows endpoints, for instance. To go back and retrospectively look at a lot of what the root causes, the root causes of sort of the security threat article du jour, and then sort of boil those down into some kind of reduction and say, let's all get a program in place to like really knock these out. These have been our problems for 20, 30 years or whatever. I don't see that as realistic. I think, people should start down that road, if they can, but largely a lot of the stuff just comes down to, as Orion always says, closing the doors and windows. Like, just patch your stuff. Just know what you have. At least if you can't get ahead of it, like, you don't want to be slower than the malware or the latest attack. Like, have some kind of a sense of, you can't keep the whole state in your head of what your enterprise organization looks like or whatever, but that your CMDB is lying to you, and you just need data. Like, you need to be able to go out and tell somebody that this is the truth about the state of the enterprise. And that, I think, is, the simple stuff. Are we patched against the latest vulnerabilities? Like, are our compliance scans up to date? Can somebody say with any reasonable degree of certainty how many computers we have and where they're at? Stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like, the problems of IT, like the fundamental problems, they really are problems of scale. And I always say, and I don't think anyone will disagree, like, I'd put one mildly competent IT admin running 500 endpoints. I think they'll do a better job than a very large team running, 500,000 endpoints. It's the problem of scale.
One of the things that you brought up, in sort of your perfect world, and I was back at Microsoft when we introduced user access control. And boy, the blowback we got from that, simply, hey, do you really want, to stop, was just unbelievable. And a lot of the leaders I meet think about, hey, we really need to do these things, and it's a cultural change that needs to take place before some of these technical things need to happen. But more importantly, it's a societal change,
right?
In that we have to get used to a little inconvenience to be a little bit safer. That solves a lot of our problems, and it's a user-based challenge that we have. And multi-factor authentication there for a long time, it was you can't make me do that. And now, with the advent of the phone and stuff, just about every time you get a text or something, it's second nature to the generations coming up. But as people that's been around to remember Windows Bob and things like that, that gets to be where's some of the problem is because we don't, and I'll do the generational thing, is we don't like to be inconvenienced. So I need to run as an administrator. I need to do these other things. And reality, when I think about it, no, I don't.
Right.
But I'm guilty as everybody else. Of okay, fine, I have to unlock this or do these other things. So that's a problem.
It slows you down, right? Like, it gets in the way of your flow. If you need admin rights for something and you can't get it, it's incredibly frustrating. And the solution, like you said, is UAC's goal apparently, and Aaron on my team was, I guess, responsible for its original design. UAC, the original goal was to make it so that we changed not the user habits, but that the users yell enough, and the programmers will fix their applications to not require these sorts of privileges. And, that's a really great model. Like if you can get the users angry enough, and everything starts to change. But the reality is like that. I can only think of a few things where users are really up in arms about something that's it's not that common.
Yeah, well,
the multi-factor thing is fascinating. It'd be if you're going to start from the ground up. I mean, that's a fun question for all of us to ask ourselves, I think. And I think about it a lot. If somebody said, go start a company and you get to sort of greenfield IT, what technologies would you choose sort of for short term and then with an eye towards long-term growth? Like if you could sort of reshuffle the whole thing, what would your first inclinations be? And that's just such a fun topic, I think.
Yeah, and it is, so that's an interview question. Does MFA piss you off? If it does, we're not going to hire you. That could be sort of a baseline question, but
most of ours are used to it by now.
Yeah, I know. We do get used to it. And to your point about trying to get the customers mad enough where developers change, that's sort of an interesting paradigm, in that eventually we're humans and we get just tired of fighting the battle, and the developers just waited us out in a lot of cases, a lot of programs.
Right. Well, in an enterprise environment, of course, the end users are more than one or two steps away from actual purchase.
Yeah.
Somebody has to be able to say that this is impacting productivity.
Yeah.
And that's different than the individual being like, I'm so tired of using this computer.
Yeah.
So, that's because of that indirection, it's kind of a hard problem.
Yeah. Okay. Well, cool. Roy, it's been fun. I appreciate you spending some time with us, sharing a little history of where we came at. The story is we're looking for those people that are intellectually curious. You want to, you're constantly sort of talking to customers. What's the next problem? What's the next interesting problem that we can solve, and sort of understand what that is. Oh, and encourage people to go out and still be that child and fix it yourself. Enable people to do that safely. Hey, you can go that extra mile. Those old skills that you thought you were done with, why don't you break them out and sort of try them a little bit? Tim Morris mentioned that. He thought his PowerShell days were over when he got to be an executive, and got reinvented when he started with Tanium.
Yeah. I mean, definitely, I would encourage anyone out there, just, as sort of a final call to action, if you're sort of on the fence and looking for a reason to get into scripting and automation, like, you should just do it. It's incredibly fun to do, and you can solve a lot of really small and large problems. Save yourself a ton of time. And if you're a Tanium customer and you want to know how to get started, tell your TAM to find me, and I will come sit and chat with you. I'll teach you how to program for, like for an hour at a time for as long as it takes.
Well, I may have to hit you up on that, because my hello world is, it's just like hell right now. So anyway, thanks a lot, Roy, for your time. And until next time, go Tanium.